I have you now.
They want to mess with my droid. They're going to pay for it.
This is the way.
You may fire when ready.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky!
The way you're fighting, you wouldn't have lasted long.
Hello there.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
Another episode of Skeleton Crew down, and the adventure still feels like it's just getting started. Because this show has really been a blast so far. We're in the third episode. We've got a lot more episodes to go, but the third episode continued to deliver on the promises that they gave us for the past 3 years in all of their media interviews about this being a pirate show, a kid adventure. I mean, they're just hitting all of these really fun notes. They introduced us to one of the coolest character designs I've seen in Star Wars in a very long time in this episode. And so that was awesome, and we've got plenty to talk about from this episode. We're going to start our breakdown of the latest Skeleton Crew episode today, and that's not the only thing we've got to talk to you guys about, because I read just a couple days ago perhaps the craziest Star Wars news headline that I have ever read. And so you are not going to want to miss our discussion about that news headline coming up in the HoloNet News segment. And I say "are" because it is not just me on this podcast, as our longtime listeners will know, but also my co-host, the pirate Pantoran himself, Colin Archer.
Hey, Carter, man, this rivals some of the best Star Wars TV. I mean, it's just fun, right? It's totally different than Andor, but like the characters in here, the adventures that you see developed, we had a lot of questions asked in the last episode, AT-AT and what is that? And for the most part, they were answered, but still left a lot of mystery on the table. There's a lot of meat to what's happening in this show, and I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you said it best that this is some of the best Star Wars TV, but it's totally different than Andor. People who listen to this show are going to know we love Andor because that's drama and intrigue and is making you think and is a lot more like television that we're used to. But this is also striking a nostalgia note and a lighthearted fun note that is something that I'd say even The Mandalorian hasn't gotten as right as Skeleton Crew has. Now, The Mandalorian's done a lot of other great Star Wars things. This isn't a criticism of The Mandalorian, but this is simply saying that they may have really found a way to tap into that like childlike joy once again after you've seen some of your first Star Wars movies that every generation of kids has had with some Star Wars. Well, Skeleton Crew really unlocks that joy again. It's a re-experienced joy that you don't get out of the other shows, even out of the other shows that are more family-oriented, like The Mandalorian or even the animated series. Skeleton Crew's doing something a little different here.
Yeah, and this being kid-focused, I think, is really the key. I'm in a busy time. My kids haven't watched this third episode, and one of them hasn't seen any of them yet. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how this develops and how they react to scenes in this movie, because really, even me, I'm just a big kid. I'm picturing myself how I would act on this pirate ship.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, it's been fun because the kids have been able to see themselves, or like you said, the one thing that every human being shares in common is that we've all been children at one point. Not the only thing, but one of the things we share in common. And so everybody can look at this show and say, oh, I remember what it was like to be a kid, and this is how I would act on this pirate ship, or what would I do in this situation? It's been really, really fun so far to get to see that lens. But we've got a lot of show to talk about. So let's hop into talking about this episode. So the title of the episode is Very Interesting, an Astrogation Problem. Very Interesting as an Astrogation Problem, which was, already you could kind of tell this is probably going to be about AT-AT and its location from reading the title.
I'd say it's about Kim, but yeah.
Yeah, I gotcha. So it opens up with just a shot of basically like downtown AT-AT. I know that a planet can't really have a downtown, but that's what it looks like, is that it just looks like any city USA downtown with a couple skyscrapers and a weird looking building. And then we cut to the suburb shot again. We get to see the houses in a different light. The houses we've already mentioned all look a lot like suburban homes, but they've got enough different about them that makes them unique and feel Star Wars.
Right fast, since this is on the topic, I see a lot of the pushback on Star Wars suburbia. I don't understand this criticism at all. You know, should we rehash it at least one more time? I mean, if you're enjoying this
Yeah, we've
podcast,
talked about it a few times, but it's worth talking about again.
You know, you got the Central Spire. That's a Star Wars thing. That's probably a Republic government thing. You've got a city. You got suburbia. You know, this criticism makes no sense. I guess when you invite somebody on, explain who cares about this. I bet those criticisms are just so flimsy.
Yeah, well, you're right. It's worth mentioning again because it's odd. Like if you're a listener to this podcast and the Star Wars suburbia is getting under your skin, you should let us know. Like call in to our voicemail number or send us an email at stationmedia@gmail.com. But send us an email about it because we really would like to know. It doesn't bother me whatsoever. The Star Wars galaxy, as we learn in this episode, is vast enough to where 10,000 systems is 0.1% of the planets in the Star Wars galaxy. So we now have a quantifiable number of around how many planets are in the Star Wars galaxy. And if 10,000 is 0.1% of one, you don't think that one place has got this suburbia thing going on? And really, now that we know more about Ad-Atten, we know about Ad-Atten being stowed away, being hidden away, it would make even more sense for these people to live like a pretty idyllic lifestyle in the Star Wars galaxy. We don't often see people living idyllic lifestyles in the Star Wars galaxy. Most people are poor. Most people live in slums or on slum planets like Tatooine. And then there's very few people that are exceptionally uber wealthy like we see on Canto Bight. But these people are down the middle, or these people are just, upper middle class as far as the Star Wars galaxy is concerned. And their planet is a little paradise, and we now know why. We have a reason for that from this episode. And so the argument not only was flimsy to begin with, but it gets flimsier the longer this show is going on why there wouldn't be some suburbia in Star Wars.
Yeah, it's really cool to see how the lore of this planet develops, the meta, if you will. And, this is a very well-to-do society. The kids carried around an insane amount of money is what it's being perceived to be. And gee, what else? I mean, they all live in their own little homes. They all work super hard, for the great work. And then it's not all on the up and up. Their little administrator, they have no idea, it seems like this is some person that's rarely ever seen. It's like somewhat of a Brave New World society almost.
Right. Like, I mean, I'm half expecting the supervisor to just be some droid. Like, the supervisor may not even exist. It's just some brain somewhere.
In the rest of the galaxy, droids are like an afterthought. Here, they're the authority. So it's kind of strange. I mean, everywhere.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of, because we've already seen the way the kids behave to droids. And it's not dissimilar to the way we've seen some characters behave towards droids in Star Wars. I mean, Hera and the Rebels crew, Chopper's a member of the family. It's totally understandable to treat droids with humanity in the Star Wars galaxy. But still, almost in every case for an average person in the Star Wars galaxy, a droid is a tool. A droid is your laptop. A droid is, it's just a thing. And Jod or Silvo or Crimson Jack or whatever we're going to call him this episode feels that same way. He even has a little bit of a disdain for droids, it seems like. But these kids are very ready and willing to trust droids. They're like, droids specifically can be trusted, and droids are, equivalent to people to these kids, is what it seems like.
To the point of no man left behind.
Exactly.
On a level, they had to have been raised by droids, like in a nursery or something like that. It's
absolutely.
My premise.
Well, we see Fern and Wim. They have distant families. We see Neil's family; it's a lot more tight knit. But Fern and Wim very likely could have been raised by droids because Fern's got the one mom, Wim's got the one dad, and they're both workaholics. It seems like.
Yep.
And so these kids definitely could have an affinity toward droids. But to get back to the episode, we see that shot of suburbia, and then we get inside one of the houses. It's Fern's house. All the parents of the kids are together, and they're talking about what they're going to do. And a security droid comes in and lets the families know that the supervisor sent him and that they're not going to do anything about this. The droid, who has no empathy because it's a droid, comes in and says, we can't do anything. They're out past, your kids took a starship out past the barrier illegally. You know, there's no nuance to the fact that they're children and it was not their ship. But they've broken the law. They're outside the barrier. Supervisor cannot risk contact outside the barrier is what the droid's excuse is. And so there's nothing they're going to do. They're not going to help them. For all intents and purposes to these families, those children are dead.
Yeah, and there's some other nuance here in a sense of, can we contact the Republic? You know, and you can, like, these adults think that's possible somehow. You know, the Republic hasn't been in contact with them for many decades, but they know that something is out there, right? They're not just alone in the galaxy. And beyond that, they think it's possible to contact the Republic, but that like this is there's some sort of level of extreme circumstance where like the contact would be required, and what the droids are telling them is like a few lost kids do not meet their criteria. You know, like maybe you can extrapolate from that. Maybe this great work, once it's completed or achieved or whatever the criteria is, we have no idea, that it's like, all right, barrier down, reach out to the Republic, let's get this thing going, whatever that is.
Exactly. No, you're absolutely right. And they have no idea. And we don't know anything about the supervisor yet, but does the supervisor know the Republic doesn't exist anymore? Is he just keeping up some AT-AT charade? Or is he...
Maybe the great work was finished a long time ago, and it's some, bourgeoisie person sitting on a throne enjoying the riches. There's so many fun speculations with this.
Yeah, they've left a lot hanging in the air surrounding AT-AT, and because there's just so much to think about. When depending on when these planets were lost, why didn't Palpatine think about them or go look for them? Or did he, from Kim's line, he would have probably just thought they were also a legend. I mean, he would have no reason to believe that they even existed either, or that was even something he was interested in. And so it's really interesting to see all of the mystery surrounding AT-AT and how little they've given us. It's a lot of fun so far.
Right. So fun.
So after the droid breaks the news, the parents start freaking out. But with the camera focuses on Wendell, Wim's dad, and he's kind of staring pensively. He takes off his glasses, and it looks just like he's got a little bit of a plan brewing. I can't venture to say at all what that might be, but it just looks like he is not ready to give up, as much as the other parents are all just freaking out, screaming. And they're only going to rely on the droid and the supervisor. Seems like Wendell may try to take things into his own hands.
Yeah, for sure. Wendell's a capable person who takes care of his kids, has a family, and works real hard and has high expectations. He's not just going to sit idly by while his kids are out there. What's really cool about this, and a lot of Amblin stuff that we've talked about on here, the parents are afterthought characters. I'm glad they're not in this case. I can't wait to see what kind of dynamic that supplants itself to.
Yeah, well, it's its own plot line, right? Like it's a second plot line. We're following the kids. We didn't spend a lot of time with the parents, but we spent a small time with them, and we know that there's action being taken on the other side, or at least the parents are trying to do something. So yeah, I agree with you. It's going to be really exciting, and we'll get into this a little bit later in the episode about when they're going to arrive at AT-AT, and if and when they're going to arrive back at AT-AT, and we got a lot of TV show left. And we've got not a lot of reasons that is apparent to me that we're not going to get to AT-AT very soon. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That there is either a giant chunk of this show that is actually going to take place on the planet, or we're going to get a big out of left field wrench thrown in the plans next episode.
For sure.
So that's been very interesting. We cut back to the kids where they are escaping with Silvo. This is after the logo flashes on screen, and he uses the Force to distract some guards so everyone can get by. And the kids are escaping from prison because they were doing that at the end of the last episode. The girls do not trust Silvo whatsoever, but the boys are fully bought into him being a Jedi.
I would be.
I would be too. Yeah, I totally would be.
I'll follow you anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Neil's justification at one point in the episode for why they should trust him, he has magic powers. And I honestly cannot argue with that hard.
Dude, Wizard shows up, I'll sign up for the Hobbit slot any day.
Yes, exactly. So he then introduces himself as Jod Nawood, second name we have for him now. We have not been given confirmation that he's Silvo, but everybody knows that. So Wim gives the kids a spiel about the Jedi being protectors of justice, as Jod is off screen disabling a guy and stealing his blaster, because Wim has just got blinders on hardcore. He is obsessed with he is looking for Jedi everywhere, and he's found one. And so he's not going to give that up, just like he wasn't going to give up the fact that the ship was a Jedi temple until it was just cold and apparent that it was not.
Yeah, I mean, he just found out magic was real. I think any of us would be in his shoes too.
Yes, I agree. So they easily escape by lying low. Jod and the kids walk through the crowd, and they're able to get to the ship. And Fern is concerned about all of this, but they are taking the ferry up to the ship. And Jod gets a look at the kid's ship, and he's just appalled by the condition of it, because it is. I mean, it's a junk heap. We don't know how old this thing is, but it's much worse off than the Millennium Falcon ever was.
Yes. It's
Silvo
a
is
ship still. I mean, underground for how long?
Exactly. We have no idea.
The cool thing about all these Star Wars ships, they're super resilient, and I like that about the whole thing. You know, they just don't fall apart on a whim. I guess unless it's a TIE fighter.
Right, cheaply made. But yeah, the Star Wars ships, the older models, they've still got some good hardware on them. So they all get on the ship. They're on the bridge, and Silvo is ready to leave to go find his friend. He calls her a she, and so immediately my mind is turning. I turned to my wife Cassidy and I said, "Who do you think it is? Like who's his friend? Do we know his friend or do we not know his friend?" Was my first question. I didn't think we knew him. Turned out to be right, but I was sitting there trying to stew on people that it possibly could be, and using the word she narrowed it down a bunch. I mean, I could only come up with Maz Kanata as the only character that it possibly could have been. But that's also been because for the past months, all the rumors online keep saying Maz is in this show. So that was why my mind went there immediately as well.
Yeah, still could be, but probably not at this point.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Because the character we're introduced to in a little bit is pretty much serves the role that Maz would totally have served.
Yeah.
Like down to line by line.
Yep.
So the kids are arguing that they got to go back for SM-33, which you called last week. And so they are insisting that they have to go back. Jod's not having it. He's like, it's just a droid. And Fern says the Jedi never leave a man behind. One, as we just talked about, he's not a man. He is a droid. There's a bunch of people in the galaxy that would have no qualms about leaving him. So the kids have this affinity for droids. But also, as Fern says, the Jedi never leave a man behind, Silvo starts to say, that's not, and then he trails off.
Yeah. Doesn't want to tip his hand.
Say that again?
He doesn't want to tip his hand, right?
Right. He doesn't want to tip his hand. But also, this could mean so many things. I mean, this was the perfect line delivery right here, because that it left it so open-ended to what does he mean? That's not about the Jedi never leave a man behind. You know, if he's going to say that's not true, well, what does he mean by that? That's firsthand knowledge that Jedi don't leave people behind. Not, conceptually I read somewhere that Jedi don't leave people behind. If he's going to say that's not true definitively, then he has some personal knowledge about this. And so, where did Jod learn to use the Force? Maybe he got left behind by a Jedi somewhere. I mean, that seems like the most readily available answer off of that, him trailing off right there.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many possibilities, like you said. I mean, the development of this character's backstory, he's been through a lot, and we're getting some inklings and tidbits. His morals are totally compromised, and what would anybody who was raised in a Jedi order? It takes an extreme amount of brainwashing. Like you're going to go, like you surmised last week. He's a former Inquisitor or something. But they're still good, I mean, he's not shooting the kids in the back. They wouldn't do that kid show, obviously. But he's not all bad, is what I'm trying to say. And there's plenty of opportunity for him to be just a straight scumbag.
He's had a few opportunities to be just a scumbag, and just not take these kids home or whatever. So I do think he's got some good in him. That's the pretty much a big point of Star Wars. Obviously, is you still got some good in you. And so we're getting that in a new way from Silvo. But then he later saves it. He says, "Oh, that's not a very Jedi thing to say that the Jedi say about the Jedi never leave a man behind." And then the kids threaten. They're like, "We're just going to go get SM-33 ourselves," and he can't have that because they're his ticket to the treasure planet. All he's going to have is this junked spaceship and be on the run with a bounty on his head if he doesn't have these kids.
If they leave the ship, they stick out like a sore thumb. I'm surprised they even made it anywhere. They're like, what? You know, I'd figured they'd get that shows Jawas on screen at one point. I'm like, man, that'd be the ultimate costume to wander around a pirate asteroid as a Jawa. You could almost do anything.
Jawa disguises. That would have been cool. I wish they could have done something like that. So Silvo then he's like, all right, I'm gonna go get SM-33 because obviously he needs the kids. So he leaves, and as soon as he leaves, Fern's like, we gotta leave him. We're leaving right now, and the kids start arguing. But then we cut to panic at the port where they're screaming, Captain Silvo has escaped. So now here's the official confirmation: this guy is Silvo. We see him in the droid workshop reactivating different droids, looking for SM-33, and at one point he reactivates a B-1 droid, who immediately goes, "Did we win?" and then gets shut off again. I laughed so hard at this, man. That was awesome. So good.
Super good. Yeah, the whole scene in here is really good. Waking up the droids, they spent an immense amount of time to make sure that scene looked perfect. And the guy who walks in, talk about him.
Yeah, so Jod finds SM-33, turns him on, figures him out, and then he's caught by this Ishi Tib, who is his old crew member. And they are just kind of having a conversation as Silvo slowly walks out of the room. The Ishi Tibs ask him, why did you just get let out of jail? Why would Brutus let you out? Especially right before his trial. So we learn that he was about to have a pirate trial, which totally means he was about to be expelled into space. I guarantee it. Yeah. He was a couple days from being expelled into space.
The dialogue here is like the best. Like they had to have consulted with some Pirates of the Caribbean writer here to get that character down perfect. He was so cool. Opportunity for a glub shitto if there ever was one.
Well, and we have complained numerous times, and especially in Star Wars TV, about lack of aliens. And a lot of times Star Wars shoehorns aliens into being the underworld scumbag villains. Like, humans are either the evilest people, Palpatine and Vader and Count Dooku, or they are the good guys or the most average people in the galaxy. The only time you get to see a majority of aliens on the screen is if they're committing crime. And this is not the same case with the pirate crew. It's definitely more aliens than it is humans. And the pirate thing is just so easy to pull off with an alien character. Like, the line delivery, it doesn't seem corny at all that he's got this pirate accent and talks in all these old-timey words, because it's coming out of the mouth of this beaked lizard creature. Like, it's, you're just like, well, I have no idea what this thing sounds like. So it's totally reasonable that he's going to sound like a cornball pirate.
Yep. Good.
But the Tib continues to have conversations with Silvo until he finally is like, we better call the guards. And then the scene cuts to the kids trying to convince each other of Silvo's morality. The Whim is like, well, he's a Jedi. And then Fern's like, he could have been faking it. The best line in this episode is when Whim's, how? And Fern just lists a million reasons that you could make something look like it's floating. And it was just super funny. String, yeah.
Yep. Good stuff.
As they're arguing, Silvo's running back to the ship with SM-33 on one of those little ferry things that the Muppet was driving from the second episode. And he's being shot at by tons and tons of pirates chasing him. Well, he docks with the ship, gets in, and immediately screams, "Hit the throttle!" And the ship's, the kids don't know how to fly a ship. They know what the throttle is, so they hit it, but they're stuck because the fuel line is still stuck to the fuel ship out there, and they're tethered to like 7 or 8 other massive ships. And so a scene ensues where there's a cannon lining up to shoot them. They've got just a certain amount of time. They're trying all these tricks, and they can't get out. It's the same scene from the Millennium Falcon and the Maw in Solo. I mean, it's just, the ship can't do it, the ship can't do it, the ship can't do it. And then finally they are like, oh, we'll go to hyperspace. And they launch to hyperspace, which, of course, it's very dangerous. But in this case, it's going to work. They launch to hyperspace, and we get one of my favorite shots in the episode, maybe in the show so far. the ship makes it away, and the fuel line snaps and ricochets back and is just destroying stuff, knocking into ships, destroying the port, throwing people out into space. And, I liked that because it was super practical. This is a giant metal chain. That is exactly what's going to happen when it snaps like that.
Yeah, the whole scene, the ships crashing each other, it's going to be a cool mechanism to make the pirates really hunt these kids down. We're going to have another big space battle at the end of this, I think. I know I'm jumping the gun in our always in motion stuff, but the very well crafted scene here with the ships crashing each other and how they got away, all that, very cool.
Yep, I agree with you. So we get, after the ship escapes, we get a shot of Brutus, and he's obviously really mad as he sees them escape, and he takes his frustration out on Steve Urkel, because Jaleel White's character, whom I don't know his name, I don't think we've been given a name, so I'm going to keep calling him Urkel until we get his actual name. And so Urkel walks up and is like, "You want me to find him?" And Brutus hits him and tells him to put a bounty on their head. And I just, after with the interviews, I anticipated Jaleel White's character being a little bigger than he has been so far. I'm surprised that he's gotten one line and it was just abuse from this random guy in a costume.
Yeah. He's capable of a lot more. That's crazy that they haven't used him more. Maybe he's got his opportunity later on.
That's what I'm saying, and maybe he does. But yeah, I just expected Jaleel, because they rolled him out a few times, and we're like, Jaleel White is in this show, promoting it with him, and so it's like, they'll probably give him a little, at least moderately sized part, and so far that has not been the case. So back on the ship, Jod is eating in front of the kids while they're starving. Like, Neil's stomach is growling. And he, the kids are talking. He's talking. He tosses his bowl at SM-33 and tells them to clean it up. And then Jod says, "Oh, there is more food." And the kids immediately go ravage it. And he walks away because now he knows the kids are going to be distracted and he's going to go poke around the ship.
It looks like they're eating oatmeal. I wondered how long that oatmeal's been sitting there. Space oatmeal. I was like, man, that shit's been underground. I'm sitting there like, I can't imagine eating that stuff.
Yeah, it was all blue. See what I thought it looked like? Have you seen? This is crazy. This is a weird tangent. But they have flaming hot Cheeto macaroni and cheese. I've seen this in the store. Well, anyways, flaming hot Cheetos are made with like red 40 and whatever else, and they have that bright red fluorescent color, and it's the same thing on Takis. Well, Takis released a blue flavor with, I guess, blue 40, and I thought it looked like someone made Flamin' Hot Cheeto mac and cheese, but with blue Takis instead, and it made me want to throw up.
That's hilarious. But yeah, I think you're right.
So that's what it looked like. But the kids ravage the food, and then Jod is walking around. I'm sorry. I'm losing my notes real quick.
Yeah,
Jod is walking around.
He's trying to
Jod's
find...
walking around the ship.
Yeah.
Yes, and he's trying to find is he trying to find anything? Because he's just kind of looking around, right? He's poking around, trying to figure out about this ship.
Well, he puts the knife in his belt, and he finds a jacket, and he's checking out boots. He's just basically being a pirate.
Yeah, just poking around, trying to find anything he can, taking whatever he wants. And then SM-33 comes and confronts him and, asks him who he is, what's his right to come and try to boss SM-33 around, just really laying into him. And he, Jod kind of bows up to SM-33 and he's like, "That's none of your business." And then SM-33 draws his full height, and immediately Jod is way nicer to SM-33.
This whole interaction is some of the best written lines in this show. Cause he's like, "I won't be repeating myself." It's got like these little double entendre jokes and just lots of little things going on here. That's just so good writing on this thing that we didn't see that in Acolyte anywhere that I recall. So it's super refreshing to see just this little bitty one little scene in here between a droid and Jod here that's just so funny.
Yeah, I totally agree, because they are having a lot of fun with SM-33 and all his lines. Like when they power him up just a little bit before this scene and he repeats himself, he goes, "I don't remember no At-Atten. I just laughed again. Like, this is just so funny. I don't know. Getting the pirate qualities on this big K2SO looking droid was a really, really brilliant idea.
And at the end of this, he pops around the corner, and it's just like, I.
Yeah, I have. So I want to talk about that scene because I have conflicted about this scene. This may be, and it's a really good thing. This is like my low point in the episode, is that scene. And so that means that this episode was great because it's very difficult to claim that that's a low point. However, what you're talking about is at the end of the scene where Silvo asks SM-33, do you really think they're from At-Atten? SM-33 answers him, they're definitely from somewhere, and then he leaves. So the first thing I have to say is, what a ridiculous answer. That doesn't mean anything. Droids don't inflect on their sentences, so there's not even any way for someone to tell what that means. They're definitely from somewhere. Everybody is from somewhere. The writing right here frustrated me really bad, because I get that it's meant to be vague and mysterious, but that doesn't work with a droid that is a logic engine. Now, I understand that droids in Star Wars develop personality, but they are still logic engines, and they make those decisions that are not... They don't say things that just don't mean anything, almost ever. I can't recall that happening with a droid from Star Wars, where they're not specific. So that bothered me a little bit. But I cannot deny that it was exceptionally funny when he walks back in and says "I" again. I laughed, but again, that is weird behavior for anybody. It's purely comedic behavior. Like, that's only meant for comedy. And then a droid does it, which makes it even weirder. And so there was just a little bit. It's very funny. I appreciate the scene, but it took me out of it a little bit. Also, I think it took me out of the Star Wars a bit right there.
I'll push back a slight bit and say L337 had a lot of similar idiosyncrasies. She was a little bit more dramatic, but, or she, I guess, droid, whatever. I don't know. It was portrayed as a she to me. But still, that droid was very emotional. And you could say this droid is very protective of his captain, too. So that's definitely a fun discussion to have at some point, for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's worth talking about. I mean, you're right, maybe after this series, we should take a look at some droid personalities. That would be worth talking about. Just the way... This is a very interesting topic that I'd like to explore, because we've talked about this on the show before in many different ways, and we almost talk about this every time there's a droid character. But in real-world time, since 1977 to now, how have droid characters changed in how they're portrayed? Because with R2-D2 and C-3PO, you get, tools. 3PO is a character. R2-D2 is a character. They're friends, but they're on that line between tool and pet. They don't really bridge that to a full-fledged relationship yet. We don't really start getting that full-fledged relationship stuff until Return of the Jedi, and then later in the prequels when Anakin develops his relationship with R2 and 3PO. But then, as Disney acquired Star Wars and as the Clone Wars was made, droids started to develop a lot more personality, and so they've changed. Droids are a lot different characters than they were previous to the Disney acquisition. And so we should really sit down and kind of talk about that and take a look at how different the droids are, because I think your point is well had, that maybe I'm comparing SM-33 too much to 3PO, or even K2SO, who's an earlier Disney droid, or Chopper, when I should be thinking more about L337 and Dio, and IG-11. Those droids who had a lot more personality, who had a lot more feelings than the droids that came before them.
Yeah, yep. It maybe in a what do you call that? A Patreon exclusive episode. That'd be a good one.
Yeah. We definitely want to hear from our listeners and our Patreon subscribers. Let us know if that's an episode you guys would like us to talk about, because the SM-33 dynamic's pretty unique. I think we're both pretty impressed with this character. I'd say he's the strongest character so far of the show for me.
He is, and I think you had predicted that he wasn't going to be part of this, and thank goodness he still is, because I don't predict him making it to the end. I'm jumping the gun again. I'll shut up.
Oh, I do. I definitely do. But yeah, let's talk about that in Always in Motion, But I've got a very, very easy justification for why I think he's going to make it to the end. So we'll talk about it there. So the kids are then at the table eating oatmeal with each other after SM33 just did his I thing. And they're talking about, do you really think that there's treasure on Ad-Aten? And Neil, I really liked this coming from Neil because it's given us a little bit more of his character. We know Neil's smart. We saw him talking about his math homework on the bus, and that kind of was leading us down that path. But now Neil's really getting his gears turning and coming up with this. He's the one asking the questions, and he says, well, aren't our parents analysts, but what are they analyzing? You know, he's pointing out that all their parents are doing something. And then Wim says, well, they're analyzing something about money as he's looking at those Republic dactyries. And the kids are starting to connect the dots, that the great work and that Ad-Aten and the treasure, all of these things are connected, that their parents are somehow influencing all of the treasure that's supposed to be at Ad-Aten.
Yeah, I really I think we had this discussion in our last episode. You talked about the kids were asked what they want to do, and they were like, I want to be this and I want to be that. And we're like, and we speculated, well, like, in regards to what? They explicitly didn't tell us. And so now they're progressing that little plot line to this of what's going on. They're buffing the edges on this MacGuffin of the planet. It's really cool.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And the second half of this episode I love. It's really, really good because of the depth that they're adding to that and the mystery. So after the kids' conversation, Jod comes in, tells them it's ready for bed, and this was really funny because it's still reminding us they're kids, and especially Fern, because Fern's the hardest of the kids. Like, she's the one that doesn't feel like a kid. She's always making right decisions. She's always making clear-headed decisions. She's evaluating stuff. Exactly. She's the mom of the group, and so it can be lost that she's a kid too. Jod comes in, time to go to bed. Fern, I'm not tired, and then immediately cuts to them being asleep. That was so funny. I'm sure as a parent you got a belly laugh out of that one.
Oh, yeah. It happens all the time.
Yeah. So Jod is watching the kids sleep for a moment, and then KB is awake. She's just staring at him in the corner. She's wearing her visor. She's thinking she's fooling him, but she's not. And then they have a conversation where Silvo, you don't trust me. And KB says she has calculated the odds of Silvo betraying them. Here's some more to build on KB's character. What do you really make of this? Like, because she now seems more Lobot-ish, like we talked about the last two episodes. She's still not Lobot. I mean, we know Lobot was enslaved by the Empire, but she's kind of bridging that gap between. She's like a cyborg, basically, and we get some dialogue at the beginning of the episode about her and her health monitors, and so as we talked about, I think it's kind of disability plus augmentation.
Yeah, it could be something like that. I mean, having ability, like knowing how to use a calculator, doesn't equal wisdom or knowledge or experience and that stuff. Well, we see her later on. She's able to help calculate the hyperspace jump trajectory and all that stuff. She's sitting there calculating the odds, stuff like that. So she's got something else in her pocket that's not just ability, right? And it's different. Yeah,
she's got like a partial droid brain.
Yeah, it's different from what everybody else has. Wim's just the whimsical little guy, and Neil's and the elephant kid.
Yeah, he's just a wing. Yeah,
there's more to him than that. But the other one's a bona fide leader, and it's cool to see the dynamic here that they're not just one size fits all. Doing really cool stuff all the time. Wim and Neil are going to have their time in the spotlight, and I can't wait to see what that's going to be.
Yeah, me too. And I gotta say, just talking about KB's character and the whole cast that's been built right here, we're talking about the way that droid characters behave. Well, SM33 is the more human character than KB. KB is the droid character for this show. She's not a droid, but she's the droid character. She's filling the role that the droid would. I mean, she's, like, to your point, spouting off odds, like C-3PO. She's sitting there saying, this is, we have the odds of this happening. Or I calculated the odds. Those are C-3PO lines. And she hasn't really had any lines that weren't C-3PO lines. I mean, even when we're back on the planet at the very beginning, on episode 1, she says that, Fern made her do X, and it sounds like Fern's always making her do stuff. Like she's just a droid willing to do what Fern tells her to do or other people tell her to do.
Yep.
And so KB is really filling that droid role.
Yep, it's interesting
So,
for sure.
it absolutely is. So that Silvo's watching them. They have the conversation about betrayal. And then Silvo gives advice to KB, and he says that not everything can be calculated. So here's our little foreshadowing. Silvo's not a bad guy, guys. Like, this is just delivering lines like that. Well, at some point, he's going to come back and save the kids. It's going to be on the brink. We think he's betrayed them, and then, he comes back. So we can totally expect that. The other thing about this scene, the hyperspace glow, do you think that would drive you insane trying to sleep with that? Because that was crazy to me that he turns the light off and there's just this terrible blue hyperspace glow in the background.
So I actually thought a lot about this when the scene was actually happening, and I'm glad you said something because you resurfaced that memory, and I should have put it in my notes, but I didn't. So, Jod walks in and he looks at what's her name sleeping there, and then
he's looking at Fern and KB,
and then he looks over at William and Neil. I mean, and they're in hammocks. Fern is on a mattress and KB's in a bunk, and at that point you have the glow for the hyperspace glow in the background. And I'm just like, man, I wish I could be there. I really do. And so my point is that no matter what your business on a starship is, this also a lot comes from the Star Trek stuff too, about wanting to be on one of those starships where you feel the hum of the engine as it's generating that power, and you can see the stars advancing outside like they do in Star Wars. They do the hyperspace, but in Star Trek it's the stars going by like snow or something like that, right? So to be in that element, I'm standing in Wim's shoes as this is happening. That not really. My life is with my children and stuff. But if I had the opportunity to sit there, if the Falcon landed outside my house and Han Solo stepped off, it's like, hey, you ready to go for adventure? I'd be like, dude, as long as I can come back in a little while, I can kiss my wife goodbye. Let's go on this thing, right? That would be such an opportunity of a lifetime, and I would very quickly adapt to anything for what I got in return from going on this adventure.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. I mean, look, on the surface level, I was talking about the hyperspace glow was going to bother my sleep patterns like a TV on. You took it in a way better direction, a way deeper direction, because it's totally true. I mean, we are getting a slice of life of Star Wars right here that we honestly have not gotten a whole lot of, and that is people who live on a starship. We have gotten that, as far as I can count, only twice, and it's bits in the Solo movie where we're in Lando's closet and we're, seeing the bunks and them enjoying that. And also the time we've actually sincerely gotten it is Rebels, where we see obviously the family lives on the Ghost. And so this is already showing us in live action something we haven't really seen a whole lot of. And that's just, this is where these people slept on this ship. This is where they did X on this ship. This is where they ate meals. The ship is more of a house, and we know where the rooms are and moving around than you ever do in the Millennium Falcon in the original trilogy. I mean, if you hadn't seen some visual dictionary or cross section of the Millennium Falcon before, and you just watched those 3 movies, do you think you could draw that ship 50% accurate on where the rooms are?
No.
I don't think so either. And so this is an opportunity we haven't gotten as fans in a while, or ever really, and that's live action, getting to see how the inside of a starship like this. And so that's been a lot of fun. So far.
Yeah, it's like a space RV almost.
Yes, yeah, it is. So they arrive on the moon of Jod's friend, and there is a stupendous soundtrack right here. It's a theremin in the background. It's giving classic sci-fi ooey-oo vibe sounds. It sounds like a UFO. It sounds like Aliens in Roswell. I just really, really liked it. Star Wars doesn't normally have that sound. But this planet with this gorgeous pink-purple planet rise in the background was really, really cool. I liked it a lot because it was our moon. I mean, it was a desolate, barren rock with an atmosphere.
Yeah, with an atmosphere. And it could be artificial. You know, there's little towers in the background. But, man, talking about the ultimate places to live as a hermit. That gas giant in the background reflecting the star. You know, that the outside is bearable. You know, I mean, they're not freezing, so it's not terrible, but they're not roasting alive.
There are places on planet Earth colder than this moon. There are plenty of places on planet Earth colder than this moon.
Right. And so, gosh, it's so gorgeous here. I'm thinking about sitting on the patio of this place, looking at this gas giant, you know, drinking coffee in the morning or something like that, just enjoying life. Almost the ultimate.
Well, this episode has set some pretty high background expectations, because, and not just this episode, but Ad-Atten is cool. I'm not hating on the suburbia, but we know what we're going to see on Ad-Atten. But then we get to the spaceport, and it is just awesome. It's something that we haven't seen in live action before, really. We've seen the Ring of Caffrine, but we haven't seen something exactly like this. And then we're getting this planet, and we're getting that hyperspace shot in the background. And so the backdrops so far have been awesome, and they're setting a really high bar, and I hope it continues for the rest of the show.
Yeah.
So the kids disembark from the ship with Jod, and they're walking on the cold, desolate moon, and Fern deduces that they're trying to hide the ship, that Silvo is not wanting the person he's going to approach to know that he just landed. And then Silvo goes on this long spiel about how they need to be wary of his friend, that, you know, he's been a friend with this person for a long time, but he kind of expects to be stabbed in the back. And he's just trying to set the kids up to not fully trust this person. It is super shady. I mean, this guy, we know as an audience, but these are kids, and you got to think about yourself as a kid. They have no idea he's shady, but he seems so shady the whole time. That line right there, just immediately, well, maybe we can't trust this person, is really shady.
Yeah, it's setting up something. I mean, I think we can kind of tell. You know, it's a small interlude, but even the little hand, we see the character's hand, and it looks reptilian almost, and which is a good parlay into what the character actually is. But it's looked menacing. I think was they're trying to get this thing.
It totally did. You know who I thought of immediately, and then I dispelled it quickly. But my first gut reaction was Sid from Bad Batch.
Oh yeah, that'd be a little Trandoshan. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought Trandoshan too. Sid didn't click with me, but you're right.
And so then that was the only other, when he says her, I was like, oh man, but I got to think that for a second, because then we get the name. But we see it during that scene with the dial. You're right, because it's immediately supposed to be menacing. We get some dialogue about arresting Silvo, and we know that this woman is speaking with someone with that authority. Now, it's a little difficult to understand the conversation, I would say, because the two voices sounded kind of similar, and it comes out of nowhere, and you don't see any faces. And so it was I had to I did rewatch it. I didn't understand the conversation, though, until the end of the episode. And then I was like, oh, now I understand what all of that was about. And so it wasn't giving away that she was good just yet, but once you know, then you know that's what that seed was planting there. Right. So Silvo comes to the door. Kim is the name of the character, and he's coming. He says, I've got, some big news, big score for us, if you'll just let me in the door. And he is greeted at the gate by the same gate watch droids outside of Jabba's palace. And I think this may be the first time we've ever heard them speak basic, or just be a microphone for someone who speaks basic. 'Cause every other time it's that same deep voice that's speaking Huttese. It's like a chuta tachiti. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me, I want one of these setups now. I want something, if somebody comes to my door at home, I want this eyeball on an armature to pop out and be like, what are you doing?
Yeah. It's just a Ring doorbell with a little extension. That's all you need is you just got to wire some way to remote control your Ring doorbell.
Yep. Somebody will make one of these days.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it can be hard. I'm kind of surprised a fan hasn't made it yet, especially the fans who have, the rooms, the Star Wars rooms and everything. It would seem that you'd be able to wire something like that up.
Yeah, for sure.
So as we said, Silvo comes to the door, and Kim is calling him Crimson Jack over the microphone. And then he asks why he has the children, or she asks why he has the children with him. Crimson Jack is super interesting nickname. Obviously, Jack Sparrow, or who's the actual real life pirate that's named Jack that I'm drawing a blank on right now?
Black Jack Roberts, I think. Sounds familiar.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was. Yep. And so this is just a pirate name illusion. But the Crimson part's really interesting because there's a character that already exists in Star Wars called the Crimson Corsair. And obviously Corsair is just a name for pirate. And he's a sequel character, but only in books. And it's a book about finding the lost treasure of Count Dooku. And it's about this pirate character who dresses in red and goes and finds the lost treasure of Count Dooku that we see in the Bad Batch. And so it kind of... I don't know if these two things are related or not. It seems like a stretch and a reach because this is just one random little short story. But I don't know. I mean, I think that they keep that kind of stuff together enough that Crimson Jack could reference that.
Yeah, could be.
But we get Crimson Jack. I'm gonna call him Crimson Jack now because he's just got so many names. We have no idea as fans what this guy's name is, for what his name really is. And I don't know if anybody who knows him in the show knows what his real name is.
Yeah, I mean, and all we can, we could be deceived. He could be an unreliable narrator. We don't know what his real name actually is.
Yep.
I mean,
exactly.
He's obviously got multiple personas depending on who he's talking to. Pirate captain over here, information trader over there, and taking advantage of some kids.
Yeah, Jedi.
And I guess since we're talking about this deceptiveness, and maybe we could roll it into Always in Motion, are his force abilities real,
I know, man. It's tough because he's done it in so many situations where he would not have control over anything to be able to plant a wire or do some kind of magnet or whatever. And so I'm very curious on what the deal is with this, with these force abilities. And I think that's what we're supposed to be doing because he just isn't behaving like any force user we've ever met. He's not behaving like a Sith. He's not behaving like a Jedi. He's just behaving like a pirate who has the force.
Yep, sure.
So yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. So they go inside to this observatory, and Fern hears Kim say something about 1,000 different worlds, and then questions that there are that many worlds, which is super funny. These kids' minds are just being blown right here. Kim is an amazing concept for a character. This was like an RPG character come to life. Like, this felt like something that someone would put in a Dungeons and Dragons game and then really elevated to a Star Wars feel. Kim, the owl astrogator, living in this super cool observatory with thousands of maps and star charts. I really, really liked this. And it was akin to that. It really reminded me of the scene where in the 300 where they visit the same kind of astrologist. I thought it was very funny to see what is normally an ancient concept taken into the a futuristic concept like Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, this character is just over the top cool. I mean, I expect to see action figures and plushie dolls and who knows what else. But also in the video game aspects of this, she, like you just said, or the tabletop, we need to put her in our Star Wars RPG or somebody akin to this character. Like the knowledge keeper type character that you come across to figure out how to complete your quest, just as these characters are doing. But it's a Maz Kanata stand-in that's even better than expected. Absolutely. It's total. I mean, I really, really enjoyed Kim's character through and through, and a good person. Not really a criminal. Didn't seem like. And so Kim gives us the rundown of what AT-ATN is. The kids go up there. Silvo explains what the kids are there for and how he came across them, and then Kim is surprised, and so she brings this big giant scroll and unveils it in front of the kids and in front of Jod, and she says that AT-ATN was purposefully hidden away from the rest of the galaxy because it was one of the jewels of the Old Republic, which are treasure planets that have all been destroyed except for AT-ATN, which is still hidden. And just amazing. That is just such a fun
concept. It's Treasure Island. It's not that far-fetched. It's a normal pirate trope concept, but they still made it worth it by throwing in the Jewels of the Old Republic part and making them planets and just giving it the Star Wars spin.
Yeah, I mean, and so that's what this adventure is for this whole show, is discovering what this planet is. The planet-sized MacGuffin.
Yes,
can't wait.
yes.
Really can't wait.
It's awesome. I can't wait. I want to see more. I want to know more. And it's a story we've heard many times. I mean, Treasure Island was written so long ago. I can't begin to say how long ago, because I know that if I say how long ago it was, I'm going to be wrong, and someone listening to this podcast is going to love Treasure Island. And so I have to get it right. Treasure Island was written in 1883. And so Treasure Island is like 150 years old. That story has been retold in so many ways. It's still so beloved. Everybody likes Treasure Island, and this is just the Star Wars spin on it. And this is something that we were really kind of promised when Disney acquired Star Wars, was that we were going to get stories told in a Star Wars way, that we were going to get, the Star Wars drama in Andor, and the Star Wars this in that, and just that we were promised a lot of different genres of Star Wars, and this is delivering on that promise in ways where sometimes it hasn't been delivered on.
Yeah, the Treasure Island, there's massive twists in that book, and that's where the character Long John Silver was in that book. That's one of the big ones. And man, Disney has done several of their own versions of it. They've already done, I think it's Disney.
Yeah, Disney's done Treasure Island.
It was one of the first animated movies that had computer, not CGI graphics, but like computer drawn animated things overlaid with a 2D animated drawings.
Yeah,
It's
Treasure
really
Planet,
cool.
right? You're talking about Treasure Planet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really, it's good, and it's popular. And it's like, that genre of animation is popular, especially among people in my generation. And this is something that is really, really making a resurgence. And stories like this, these are popular. Anecdotally, I just went and watched a production of Treasure Island. My mom's a high school teacher. And so she's also the play director for the high school. And I watched a production of Treasure Island like 6 months ago. And so that story just lasts, and it can be told in so many different ways. It's really good to finally see it introduced to Star Wars. So the kids say that they need a map. But then Jod and Kim tell them that they can find At-Aten by questioning the kids, that they don't need a map. And so they start getting information out of the kids. Kim starts asking them all kinds of questions just about where they're from, about their planet. A really, really neat concept to sit here and be able to filter and sort like that was really cool. Again, everything about Kim's pretty neat. But during questioning, KB says that they learned about Coruscant and Alderaan, and we get an awesome line. This was so good. This was just so well written. Kim says, "Alderaan missed the war, did you?" Because it's a time-setting device. It's a great allusion to, obviously, A New Hope. And we as fans get to appreciate that line. And we get to figure out how little these kids know, because Neil goes on to ask about what war, implying they also don't even know about the Clone War. They don't know about the Galactic Civil War or the Clone War.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And yeah, there's so much. I'm watching these scenes so I can get all the full context. And another thing is, why was this planet hidden away? Where the other one's being destroyed. I can't wait to talk about this too. But yeah, how everything about how this develops, how she's pulling the information out of the kids, the symbols on the kids' pack, and then what progresses next is real fun too.
Yeah, it is. Because Fern does not think this is going to work. So this is where we learn that they've narrowed it down to 10,000 planets, which is already 99.9% eliminated, which is super good. And Fern doesn't think this is going to work, which is kind of dumb. I was like, what do you mean? This is already really impressive that they were able to narrow it down that much. And so Fern starts stomping away, and then Kim notices the symbol on her backpack, and she gets super excited, grabs it, and her exact words are, "I've never seen something written in Palmerish numerals in Proto-Republic artifacts. And so Palmerish is some new language, but this little piece on the back of Fern's backpack is giving them enough information to find At-Atten. Super cool. It was a great little scene right there.
Exactly, yeah. And oh man, just seeing how they operated this character. Is it a puppet? Is it a total CGI? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, I want to know because there's a lot of practical effects in this show. We've already seen that. They just released a behind-the-scenes little feature that showed a lot of the practical effects, and so it is really interesting. Like what is her face animatronic? Really, is kind of what it seems like to me. It seems like maybe they used the same technology they used on the Grogu puppet, but for her face.
Right.
So they have enough information for At-Atten, but Kim realizes in her excitement that she kind of gave that away. She gave away the game to Silvo. She got too excited, and now he knows, we found At-Atten. Because he's wise. I mean, the dude's been around, and so he knows that she's stalling. He deduces that immediately. Because then the New Republic immediately chimes in over the radio that they're on the way. Totally giving up the game. Totally giving up the game to Jack. And so Jack grabs the astrogation charts for At-Atten, and then he destroys the console. And so now the kids don't even have a choice. They've got to go with this guy because he's got the map. There's not going to be another one. And so the KB has this little dialogue with Kim where she tells her to find the truth from Jack, and then Kim offers to help the kids anytime. And so I am hoping against hope that Kim's back this season. I really want to see her again.
Yeah, me too. We had the speculation back when they put Zeb in. They're like, well, they put a lot of effort to put that character in there. Sure, they were going to see him again, and we haven't seen him since. This one, I want to say the exact same thing. We're going to see this character again. I mean, because, you put out on the wire that there's a gang of kids looking for At-Atten. I mean, because a whole gang of pirates know. The Republic knows now after this coming up scene. Kim knows. And she's all about catalog and all this and that. And she's going to show up again for sure.
Yeah.
Jumping the gun on them.
Hopefully. I'm hoping. So the kids go out, or KB goes outside, and X-Wings are strafing with spotlights, trying to find them. And so everyone's running back to the ship. But as soon as they get to the ship, the kids hold Jack outside the ship. They are not going to let him in. They're standing at the door, and then they get that with the threat of SM-33. Because at some point, these are all still just kids. Right. But they are demanding that Jack tell them the truth. And so it takes a little bit. It takes KB calling the Republic to come find him. But finally, Jack breaks down, and he says that he is like them. He's alone and afraid. And then he admits to not being a Jedi, which came a lot earlier than I anticipated. I thought that was going to be something he was selling the kids for a few more episodes.
Yeah. Right preceding this, they're running to the ship. And they all go down the little hill, and Neil trips and rolls down it.
Yeah.
And you had to be looking to see it. I mean, but it's something wasn't even spoken about, but it's just this hilarious little things. A little klutz guy here, Chunk from the Goonies, being himself, right? It's hilarious.
Yep. He is. He's so funny. Neil's good comic relief. He's really good comic relief. So he says he's alone and afraid, and then that he's not a Jedi. And they ask him, so I think Neil is the one who chimes in. He goes, but how do you make things float? We don't get an answer. But yeah, Neil, we all want to know that. And then KB demands that he work for them before they let him on the ship. They're like, you're not coming on the ship unless you work for us. Because at first he tries to do a partnership. So they all load onto the ship, and then there's a chase. The X-Wings are coming. They're chasing the ship. And Neil's given the keys. He's driving. KB is doing the navigation. She's trying to find the hyperspace route. And then Fern and Wim are putting the turrets, and they're shooting at the X-Wings. And so it's classic Star Wars chase scene, and these kids are living it up. Even Fern is smiling, super excited. They're shooting at the cops, though. These are the rightful police of the galaxy. These kids are legitimate pirates now. These kids are actual pirates.
Yeah. I love the group of little scenes. I think in real life, the kids would have just rolled over to an adult doing anything. But I love how screwed on these kids' heads are. They're not, I mean, you don't even have Wim or Neil be like, hey, we need to go. We need to let's do what he says. It's they figure out that he's not a Jedi, but I mean that's not totally true either. He just said, well, I never said that. Well, that could mean he's not a Jedi now, which is kind of obvious. After a lengthy amount of time not being a Jedi, just like Obi-Wan is. I'm not going to go advertising that I have force powers, because in the last little bit of time, if you did that, somebody's going to show up and kill you or conscript you or put you in amber under a castle. And that's bad. So I wouldn't be shouting I'm a Jedi either.
No, I would not at all. Because, even though the Empire is defeated, it's still very dangerous to be a Jedi. There are not very many of them around.
Well, and just what I'm saying, old habits die hard. If he spent the last 2 decades hiding out, trying to make his way as a pirate captain, even with these kids with the treasure planet on the horizon, I'm not going to sit there and be like, well, I guess I better start finding another crystal and putting my lightsaber together. It'd be real hard.
No, that's a good point. Very good point. So then Silvo says, this is just an important line, rely on a droid and they'll let you down every time. So this guy's got problems with droids. It's not just he didn't want to go back for SM-33. This guy's got something going on where he does not trust droids. But he takes the helm back and successfully makes the jump, and they get away from the X-Wings. The kids are off into space, what we assume is AT-ATN, but probably not, because what else are we going to do? But they make it away, and then the X-Wings dock at Kim's, and they say that they couldn't shoot down because the kids were inside. And that's the end of the episode, except I was so disappointed that the X-Wing pilot was not Carson Teva. I was really hoping it was Carson Teva.
Me too.
I was just like, man, because when I heard the voice over the radio, I just looked at my wife and was like, oh, yeah, that's Carson Teva. I was totally wrong, but I was like, they got him again. And then I was so disappointed when it was not the case. I hope he shows up. This is in the whole, for the fans who don't know, Skeleton Crew is within the Favreau-verse, the Filoni-verse, within Star Wars, because Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are executive producers on this show, as they, did Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, The Mandalorian, and this takes place around the same timeline. And so this is going to tie in with all of those. And so Carson Teva has so far been the uniting link between all of those shows. And so hopefully we're going to get some more Republic action because we want him to come back.
Yeah, for sure.
But at some point, when do you say it's a big galaxy and it's starting to get unbelievable that Carson Teva is everywhere at once? That's the other. I don't know if I'll ever get tired of it, but you got to start thinking about it then, because when you start to put these planets on a map, you're like, wait, how is Carson Teva there and there? But we don't know where any of this stuff is, so who knows? But that wraps up the episode. I had a great time. I had a great time talking about the episode. I had a great time watching the episode because it's just such a fun Star Wars romp, man. It's just they have done a really good job so far with this show and making it feel like Star Wars.
For sure. All this, what we just talked about, this fight or flight scene where they're shooting at the X-Wings, taking place with that gas giant in the background. To me, that's what Star Wars is about. I think of Rogue One with Scarif under them doing all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I think of like the trench run, and they got this massive, unbelievable station that's firing back at them, and you got that little scene where Yavin's about to peek around that gas giant. It's almost the exact same as, we're fixing to breach this line of demarcation here where we can jump to hyperspace. So cool here. All these elements are woven together to make Star Wars. That's what we're here for. That's why this show has such a high rating on the Rotten Tomatoes and this and that. And we're here for it, man. This is so good. Yeah,
I'm pumped. With the way that the reviews have gone, audience and critic, I think that this show will get renewed for a sequel, if we see the finances there. I really hope that it's also performing financially. I mentioned this last week. I have to mention it again, is I haven't heard about it from anybody. I've recommended it to like 4 people, and I know for a fact I don't think any of them have watched it. And so that's super disappointing. I hope that that the goodwill with Star Wars has not been killed enough to where people are, this is just going to start to be a trend. I haven't heard enough about this show to be hopeful that it's got this like revival quality or that people are appreciating how good it is yet.
Yeah. I think it'll get there, especially once we get to the holiday. I bet it'll be taking off a little more.
I hope so. I'm definitely hopeful for that. So that wraps up the meat, but we still got to talk about this show because there's a lot left on the table. So let's hop in right now to Always in Motion.
Difficult to see. Always in motion is the future.
All right, Colin, so we've got a lot going on in this show. We've got what the parents are trying to do. We've got the kids trying to get back home. And we've got all of this new information about At-Aten. So do you have any bold predictions for the next episode or for the rest of the show?
So the first one is, I don't think, we kind of alluded to it a minute ago, I don't think they're going to end up straight at Aten. I really think, because I'm looking at, one thing with science fiction shows, in a lot of cases they're balanced on a razor's edge in a sense of suspension of disbelief. If it's too fake or too outlandish, people think it's dumb, and it doesn't perform very well. I'm kind of hard thinking of some examples, but like think about where the movies where aliens win or something like Independence Day 2. That movie stunk because they wanted to take the core of the planet. Okay, whatever. And my point is, in this case, is if they're going to narrow down all these 10,000 planets to just one, I don't think so. And I think for a narrative, being that there's a few more episodes on this, they slam that card in. They got to get down into the science a little bit of, how would even this Star Wars astrogation professional, because these aren't names on a map like we determined. These are stars that have like gravitational pulls and star systems that exist in certain spots around a nebula amongst a whole galaxy, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. So I think there's 3 planets, and they're going to show up at one of them like, oh, well, this isn't that Aten, and we're going to have our first encounter with some pirates that are looking for these kids or something, because like I said, now everybody knows these kids are making a stir in the galaxy. You've got pirates, you've got the Republic, you've got Kim wanting for the safety of these kids and stuff. And so there's going to be a fun encounter in the next episode for sure.
Do you
they're not
think
going to get home yet?
You think we're going to get an encounter? I don't think they're going to get home yet either. I absolutely agree with that. Do you think that we're going to get a larger scale encounter between the pirates and another force, whether it's the kids and some other pirates, or the kids and the Republic, or the kids and somebody, or just the Republic and the pirates? Do you think we're going to get a larger scale conflict than we saw between Gorian Shard and the Mandalorian? Or do you think we're not going to get as large a scale conflict?
At some point, yes, there's going to be, I think, a very large one.
Give me a. Can you think of a size like Battle of Scarif? Smaller, right? Smaller than Battle of Scarif.
Smaller than Battle of Scarif. I mean,
Battle in Naboo. Space Battle in Naboo.
Yeah, something like that. I mean,
Okay.
It's going to be whatever ships that we saw at the pirate base, Port Borgo. Every one of those ships that we saw, because that was the setup, right? They pull the fuel line, all these ships slam together, the tether goes back, and now the pirates are, they already don't like Silvo, but now these kids have caused a lot of damage, and for somebody as insecure, pretentious as a pirate, they're going to want to go seek revenge, and so we're going to see all of those ships hunting these kids down. It's going to be cool.
Not to mention, it's a pirate show. And we saw the very opening, them using docking tubes and guys in spacesuits. And that's just not something where, it's going to be a one and done thing. I don't expect, at least.
And even in the old Pirates of the Caribbean, it was, the Black Pearl, which was its own little independent ship. You had the Pirates, which was their whole big fleet. And you had the English Navy, which is their whole big fleet. I mean, there's direct analogs to everything that's in this show. With being the Pirates, the Republic, and our own little Black Pearl here.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got to say, can you think of a company that you would rather produce a pirate Star Wars than Disney? I mean, they've got like the pirate market cornered. Pirates of the Caribbean,
they
that
do.
Treasure Island reproduction, that Treasure Planet that Treasure Planet movie. I mean, they've just got Disney has been banking on pirates for a really long time, and so they understand pirates better than a lot of people. And like you said earlier when we were talking about the meat of the episode, I'm sure
also
they brought
forgetting,
in pirates consultants.
Sure, you're forgetting Jake and the Neverland Pirates on the Disney Kids show.
You know, I actually thought of that, but I did not know the name. I was like, I don't know what that thing's called. But Captain Hook, forgot about that one. Forgot about
Dude,
him.
I have to watch Jake and the Neverland Pirates practically on repeat for over 2 different spans of my lifetime.
Yeah,
So
I can believe that.
I could almost talk about Jake and the Neverland Pirates as much as this show. So
You should start a Jake and the Neverland Pirates station podcast.
regardless, your point is eminently stands. I mean, they got the market cornered on pirate stuff. Now it spans across, steampunk pirates. They got Star Wars pirates. They have regular Pirates of the Caribbean. There's pirate history is actually pretty vast. We talked about Black Jack Roberts and all that stuff. We think of Pirates of the Caribbean. There are pirates over in Asian countries too that had big fleets.
Oh, there's pirates today. I mean, you know that. Everybody knows that. We've still got pirates in Somalia.
Yeah, but I think they're held with a little bit more disdain than some sort of illustrious.
Oh yeah,
that they
yes.
are-
Well, I don't. But that's
that in
kind of
the
the
past.
that's kind of the rose-colored glasses about pirates, because there's that meme about Jake and the Neverland Pirates where one of their lessons
Yeah,
is a
pirates
pirate
don't steal.
never steals.
Wait a minute, that's why they exist.
Yeah.
But no, one thing we're talking about SM33. That's another thing we need to speculate on. Is he going to make it to the end of the show? I mean, to be more specific about this, I think that character is going to die or something like that. But to elaborate a little bit more, this character, a lot of these characters have direct analogs to the Goonies. KB is what's his name? I forget. But Neil is Chunk. Wim is Eric, I think is the other kid's name. Mouth is what's the girl's name in this? I can't
KB.
keep all this in my. No, KB and the other one.
Oh, you mean Fern? I got you.
Fern. Fern is Mouth, and so SM33 is Sloth, the big deformed character who's a protector of the kids and is kind of silly at the same time. And so the Sloth makes it to the very end and hangs out with Chunk at the end, becomes part of his family because he hangs out with the Fratellis. They're the bad guy. They're the bad guy pirates in the Goonies for the most part.
Right.
So it's I bet we could rewatch that movie and we could really surmise what the next plot point is going to be in this TV show.
Yeah, probably so. I'd say that SM33 is going to make it to the end because he is in the center of the poster. Is why I think that.
There you go. There you go.
And that was actually in our conversation earlier. It was like a light bulb over my head. I was like, I don't know why I ever thought SM33 was going to die in the first place when he's the center of the poster, and so he has to. There's no way that he's going to be only in 2 episodes, and so I think he'll make it to the end for that reason. Now, does he survive the last episode? I can't say. I'm not sure, but I bet he makes it to the last episode.
Another thing to speculate on that I think is going to be fun is, KB had her spotlight in this one a bunch. Fern had her spotlight maybe in the previous episode. The other kids have yet to have their spotlight. Maybe in the very first episode, right, was the Wim and Neil episodes, but they're kind of buffooning around, and Neil's kind of buffooning around in this one a little bit. Wim came more in at the end, shooting the cannons, right? But we got this hero's journey yet to develop a lot of plot points on, and Wim really has to come into his own, and there's going to have to be a trial for him to overcome, and it's going to be super fun to see how that thing develops.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I think you're totally right. I'm excited to see the rest of the journey. I am not sure where it's going to go. I'm liking the fact that it's a classic story so far, and that it's a story we're familiar with, and so I'm pumped. I'm pumped to get into the rest of it. So that wraps up our Always in Motion segment, and now it's time to talk about the news segment that we mentioned at the beginning. We're going to head right on into our HoloNet news.
You made the holonet.
So, Colin, we've got a few news stories, and I'm going to give you the option. Do you want to talk about the crazy one first or the crazy one last?
Let's do the crazy one last. Let's build up to it.
All right, we're going to build up to it with the least crazy news. That is that Diego Luna has been confirmed for Star Wars Celebration Japan. Super cool. We're not going to Celebration Japan, so not as cool. But I'm very happy for the fans who are going to be there that they're going to be with Diego Luna. No surprise that Diego Luna is going to be at Celebration Japan, though. Andor comes out next year.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we could go. That'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
Yes, yeah.
I'm too busy. I don't have the money, and
Yeah, exactly.
I think we'd have to start our
Responsibilities.
passports now to be able to get them in time or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not cheap. The flights are not cheap. Where we stay is not cheap. And really, we'd have too much fun and probably get in trouble. So we need some buffer
Right.
cash for there.
Right. Yeah, so, when it's back in the States, which is certainly where it's going to be in 2026, we'll be there. We'll totally be there. But
Cross
in
your
Japan, we
fingers
won't
for
be.
Texas.
Yes, yeah, cross your fingers for Texas. So, next news story. This one's pretty interesting. So, right after the third episode premiered, Jude Law, he gave a little bit of an interview to EW about his character, about Jod Nana Wood, or they released the interview after that. And he's alluding to his relationship with the Force, and it's really interesting because he's kind of alluding to the fact that he is Force sensitive. I mean, from what I get out of the interview, I don't know if that's what you're reading, but from the way I'm reading it, it seems like he's alluding to the fact that he's got a relationship with the Force. Now, what that relationship is, we don't really know, but there is an existing relationship.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out what kind of analog this character would be in anything, that's like a low-hanging fruit. And I'm having a hard time discovering who this guy would be based on, because it sounds to me like he's going to have his own hero's journey in this thing too. And reading what he's said in here, to me, I'm on the fence still. It doesn't sound like he was a forlorn Jedi, somebody who maybe even just left the order. I mean, because it's entirely plausible that he's self-taught, because he's not doing. I mean, you made the point in our first episode about this TV show. He's surrounded by people. If Anakin Skywalker were in this situation, he'd do some really cool force punch on the ground and knock everybody off that run off or something like that. And it would be a trivial thing for a full power Jedi to be able to even knock down a whole group of people, as we see Darth Vader do in the comic books, right? So this guy, I mean, and that's what's the fun about this TV show. He's either amateurish, meaning that it's undeveloped and even still untold possibilities there, or he's concealing his power, which, we're both pretty good Dragon Ball Z fans. There's a lot of reason to conceal your power in certain circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right. From this EW article later, just a little bit in the interview, the next paragraph, he says something about how Jod is someone who's had his childhood snatched away from him, and so that took me down this rabbit hole of he's like Star-Lord from Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, he's this kid, got picked up by pirates, made to be a pirate, and he either had another pirate that was perhaps formerly a Force user or was a Force user that instructed him, or, like you said, self-taught. Or they could be framing it as the Jedi stole his childhood away from him. We don't really have any idea, but that lack of a childhood really means he had some kind of trauma that either stunted his Force use or made him learn Force use or something like that. Just down that kind of rabbit hole, that pathway.
Yeah, and then I think it happens mostly in the books, and you have to read a lot of books to span across and see exactly what's going on. But one of the things is that the greatest people in the galaxy, Palpatine being the most obviously one, but even the Scott Leia, she was only modestly trained in the Jedi arts as an adult, right? After Luke Skywalker They figured out there's more than just kids who grew up on a farm and more than kids who grew up as royalty on some planet somewhere or on Alderaan. And that's the point of the Jedi. They want them when they're kids to really hone in and develop not only the powers themselves, but the responsibility of these powers. And so if you have somebody who doesn't have this, is self-taught or is somehow like forlorn of the Jedi, there's tons of stories of kids who leave the Jedi Order and they're unopposed. I think Yoda comments on that at some point.
Mm-hmm.
There's trauma, like you said, but then there's also like discipline and these fearful situations where people discover they have powers. And, Leia at the very end was able to pull herself into the ship, stuff like that.
Right.
Where you reach down and do stuff and figure things out. But it's a fun discussion to have for sure.
Well, and it's not outside the realm of possibility that, Jod is around Clone Wars age. You're some Padawan that got separated from your master, and Hondo's crew, for example, comes around you. We see Anakin and Obi-Wan struggle against Hondo's pirate crew, outsmarting them multiple times. You're one Padawan. Well, now you're just a pirate. Now they're just going to force you to, because the Force is pretty handy for a pirate crew to have along. And so if you got kidnapped at a young enough age, you're just forced to be the pirate's little Force monkey.
Yep, for sure.
So
he quasi dresses as a Jedi. He's got not exact, but heck, I dress the same way as when I was a teenager. Jeans in a polo and a hat.
Right.
I'm 40 years old.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to shake how you dress. So the last news story we have to talk about, I'm glad we saved it for last because it's crazy. I did not expect to ever read this headline. The news that broke is that Jeremy Allen White, that's the actor from The Bear, the main character in The Bear, Jamie in The Bear.
And Shameless.
And he's in Shameless, yeah. He is going to voice a Star Wars character in The Mandalorian and Grogu, which is super cool. Voicing is super interesting because Jeremy Allen White is a young, attractive actor. He's not a voice actor. We've seen him in Shameless and The Bear. He's clearly an on-screen actor. So you'd think they'd cast Jeremy Allen White as some guy, some underworld guy, some badass in Star Wars or whatever. But no, Jeremy Allen White is going to be voicing a character, and he's voicing a character that we've seen before. He is going to be voicing Rhoda the Hutt, which is, I was blown away when I read this headline, man. Jeremy Allen White as Rhoda the Hutt? What is that even going to sound like?
Yeah, what is he going to do? The concept is kind of crazy. It's hard to fathom, really.
Well, I'll tell you what happened. I know what happened. Rhoda did not want to live the crime life, and so he ran away from home and went and opened a restaurant. And now he is serving up Coruscant beef sandwiches somewhere, and we're going to get Slice of Life Star Wars Diner, Rhoda the Hutt's the chef. That would be a great series. We could get that rolling immediately. Some Hutt chef, because with their size, they've got to know quality food. So that's got to be what it is. But
yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah. But really, I'm pumped to get Rhoda the Hutt back because he is a one and done. For fans who are unaware of who Rhoda the Hutt is, which would not be crazy because you only had to miss one single thing that ever came out, he was in the Clone Wars movie, which was an animated movie that premiered in theaters in 2007 that was 4 episodes from the Clone Wars TV show smashed together in one arc. And so we got a baby Hutt, that Jabba the Hutt's son, and he was kidnapped in that arc. And the Separatists kidnap him, and the Jedi deliver him, and there's all this intrigue. And Rhoda the Hutt was seen there and never mentioned again, no word about it. And that movie came out 12 years ago. And so it is time for us to get Rhoda the Hutt back. It is time for us to get Rhoda the Hutt back on screen.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I agree. That'd be fun.
Yep. I'm excited. I'm ready to see it. I want to know what it's going to be like. So I'm happy for the character's return. But that was the big news. That was the big news we're going to wrap the HoloNet news segment up with today. And so we've got one more segment left, and we're going to head right into it, and that is the Star Wars moment of the week.
We would be honored if you would join us.
All right, Colin, what is your Star Wars moment of the week?
So mine isn't expressly Star Wars, but it's akin, like we usually do on our podcast. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle came out, and I've been playing it on PC. And man, are you in for a treat with this?
I'm
game.
so excited.
It is so fun. It is so fun. I don't want to talk about it that much because we're going to review it on this channel, and Carter has yet to play it. So, that's all I'll really say. I mean, you get to play as Indiana Jones, and everything that you think playing as Indiana Jones would be, you get to do. I mean, it's a 9 on my scale. There might be some mechanics, game issues, but I'm on PC, and I'm kind of an optimistic on this thing, and maybe it didn't translate to PC that well. Because it pops up, it's like, this game is best played with controller. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. So, yeah, I'm still playing through it, and I don't even count it as a downside. I'm having so much fun. The game gives me motion sickness. And it just forces me to play it in spurts and enjoy it more. But
Yeah,
gosh,
yeah. I know. I'm
it's so
disappointed
cool.
that you're having the motion sickness, but I'm happy to hear it's so good. And you're not the only person to text me about this game and tell me that it's great. And so I'm pumped. I haven't gotten the opportunity to do it yet. We're moving right now, and so I just haven't been able to sit down and play video games in a little while. But like you said, we're going to be reviewing it here on the show just like normal. We'll get to use our Indiana Jones theme for the 3rd time. I'm super excited about that, and I'll can't wait to play it. I actually had a Indiana Jones moment of the week as well, though, this week, and so that's what I'll share. My buddy Devin, who I'm sure I've mentioned on this podcast before, collects retro video games, and so his retro video game collection always inspires me to, when I'm back in my hometown, kind of dig through my stuff and see what I can find. And so I found my old Nintendo DS, and I found an Indiana Jones video game on the Nintendo DS that was one I didn't even remember playing as a kid. I was like, what is this game? I was obsessed with Indy as a kid, and so I definitely would have had it if it came out. But I was like, what in the world is this? Well, it was called Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings, and I fired it up, and I would immediately, as soon as I saw the graphics on screen, it was like transported back in time. I immediately knew what it was, and it was awesome. It was super fun. I played it for like 10 minutes, but it was great because it was a whip-cracking, running around, shooting the revolver, punching people game. I mean, you were just Indy on an adventure. It was great. It was really, really neat. I'm sure it was probably not great. I'm sure that the reviews were pretty bad, as games like that tend to be. But you would have fooled me because I loved it as a kid.
Yeah. Well, this one, I mean, yeah, I really don't want to say anything.
Good. I'm excited to play it. I'm pumped to play it. Yeah, it had a 6.7 on Metacritic, or a 67 on Metacritic.
Oh, that old game, yeah.
The
I
old
haven't
one.
looked at
The
any
old
of
one.
this stuff.
Yeah. No, I don't know what the circle one, the golden circle does.
Yeah, video games, they're so controversial sometimes, and you could stretch some stuff, but really, if you're an Indiana Jones fan, whatever.
You're gonna enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yep, I got you. Well, that wraps up the podcast today. We really appreciate you guys coming along and listening with us. We appreciate your listenership. We appreciate you guys being longtime fans of the Star Wars station and listening to our podcast. We love talking about it. Skeleton Crew has been a blast so far, and we're pumped to get to continue to talk about this show and continue to talk about Star Wars with you guys.
Yeah, we're having such a great time. And it's not just Star Wars, it's Indiana Jones. We never thought we'd get that. But man, the buffet is like got the best meat on it with this Skeleton Crew. And it's exactly what Star Wars needed. We got this news with Road to the Hutt. No, that's so far out of left field. And I cannot wait to see that movie. It's going to be so fun. No, it stopped. It just cut off. Like he stopped talking. He said, so, and then it